And we're live. Welcome back. This is going to be session 4 of 8 for day 1 of Dare to Be Great 2020. And the next speaker, good friend of mine. We go back a long ways. When I was first starting out the podcast and everything, you've probably heard me share this story many times, but I'm going to go ahead and go through his introduction here and bring him onto screen, and we're going to take it from there. So Jim Marshall, again, my good friend, he has been a licensed mental health professional in Michigan since 1987, specializing in the treatment of traumatic stress and relationships through 2013. He is now fully devoted to supporting the resilience of 911 telecommunicators and to optimizing their care of citizens struggling with mental crisis and suicide risk. Jim founded and directs the 911 Training Institute, the 911 TI courses, conference presentations, resources, and published works equip 911 pros to achieve excellence in personal mental health, performance, and morale. He's the co-editor of The Resilient 911 Professional, a comprehensive guide to surviving and thriving together in the 911 center. That is available on Amazon. Make sure to check that out. And also, Jim Marshall, he's also a fourth generation pearl diver, a black belt in Taekwondo, and speaks 7 African dialects, and added this last pile of crap. That is how this is written here. This last pile of crap to his biography to make fun of himself. Welcome, Jim Marshall. It's so awesome. Okay, I'm gonna drop off and you do your thing, man.
Listen, all I gotta say is you guys rock because you showed up for this thing. COVID-19 sucks, but we're making a life anyhow. So I'll take off the gear and we'll connect with each other. Let's see if I can get all this off here. Hey, wow, what a mess. All right, where's makeup artists when you need them? Hi, folks. It's good to be with you. Very, very good to be with you. And, you know, when I think about the fact that we're even together like this, that Ricardo and all of his derelicts, me included, have the privilege of being with you guys and being able to share today from our hearts. And this session for me is something that I don't think almost anybody has heard much of from me. There are little pieces of it that some of my students will recall. But I just want to start out by saying thank you so much for staying with the 911 family, for being with us today. And my belief is that not every day is created equal. Not every hour is created equal. And what do I mean by that? If we will look for what is there for us, if you will allow yourself to be in a mindset right now, you may be tired, you may be hangry, go grab yourself something and come back since you're right there at home. But if we will lean in together, I'd like to believe that what I'm going to offer you today, not because it's amazing from my own mind, but what I've gathered through not just reading books and training and all that stuff in my own education. But if you'll lean in with me from what I've taken into my heart from your peers, from some of you, there may be quite a few out there who we've had one-on-ones together. And I've learned from you and I've listened. And when I combine that with the privilege I've had, the sacred privilege of being with clients over many, many years, there are some key concepts that have occurred to me that I've never quite delivered this way to the 911 family before. So when Ricardo invited me in, I said, I want to talk about today wondering compassionately. And you can see on the screen here, who's that addressed to, right? Every 911 family member out there, all of you guys, it's addressed to your heart and your mind. It's addressed to your home where you hopefully share most of the love. And sometimes we're in solo eras of our life, but that doesn't mean that we're not still sharing that love. And it's addressed to your lifetime. I really hope that what we do today can be powerful for your lifetime. So I'm going to invite you in. You guys check out the polls, respond to the polls. Think about the questions that I've asked. Fire away with your questions with me too, because I've got a premise, you guys, today. I have a little premise. And that is that this thing that we're doing is vulnerable. Now, here's the deal. There's what? There's me, and then there's like more than 1,500 of you out there. Actually, 1,625 by count right now. And I'm going to say, what makes that vulnerable? Because you know what? Nobody who's presenting here today is phoning it in. All of us, I can guarantee you, have felt insecurity, have felt vulnerability. Why? Because if we just do death by PowerPoint, if we just kind of talk about book crap, if we just do the stuff we're comfortable with, there's no risk. But all of us are leaning in because we are willing to risk, because we want it to matter for you. Take a look at the V up here. You can see on the V that the way it's shaped, there's me on one side and then you on the other. But look, if I just phone it in by PowerPoint, notice how much space there is at the top. There's like the Grand Canyon. The further you move down that V, the closer we get. In other words, the more I might take a risk to be a little vulnerable with you, since it's just an intimate small group, and because I can trust you, right? Not to gossip. I mean, 911 never gossips, okay? No, but in this room, truly, I'm entrusting you with some things that are personal here, right? And I want you to think personally. No one can see you today. No one can see you. You can do the thinking you want to do. If you're crying, nobody's even going to notice it, right? And here's the thing. The greatest risk produces the greatest power. If it's a smart risk, it's not that we spill our stuff to everybody, right? I hope you don't. I sure don't. But we can take smart risks to lean into each other, to come down the V. Notice there's no space at the bottom. We're right there. It's mano a mano. It's getting real with each other. And when we do that, we can gain so much more. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories today. One of them's mine. There's another from somebody else. And I saw a shout out to Todd Borowski. I saw you out there, Doogie. I saw you. And so Doogie and all the rest of you, I want to invite you to do something. Now, this might sound crazy. My wife, Linda, we were just married 38 years a couple of days ago, our anniversary. And she said, don't give your cell phone number to people. What do you know? They're going to misuse it. It's never been abused. It's been used a lot, but never been abused. So you guys, I'm making a choice today to invite you to join me thinking at a level we usually don't think. And by the way, if you think this is, when we're talking about compassion, it's all soft and gushy and like kumbaya and all that. No. Let me say that some of our toughest people in the military have had their lives saved by discovering compassion, not just for somebody else, but for themselves. I want to invite you to do something. Today only is a free bonus for you, and that is Ask the Shrink. Okay, now I will not be practicing psychology. You know that this is not going to be like official advice, so don't sue me later, okay? But I'm going to invite you. You're going to be asking questions up here. We have Leah from Grand Traverse. Yay, Leah, and our buddy Ricardo. They're going to be keeping track of the things you officially ask and comment on. But I want you to use my phone number to text me if you have questions that are really personal that you don't want people seeing associated with your name up there. We did this at the Michigan conference, and my phone blew up with the comments, the questions that I got. So you guys, I'm inviting you with what we're discussing today about compassion. It really opens up how we deal with our own souls, how we deal with our own hearts, how we roll with relationship. And so there may be some questions you know are pertinent. They come up to you that I want you to encourage. I want to encourage you to ask me those questions. If I don't get to them during this hour, I will respond to you personally. If I get blown up way too much, I'm still going to do my best. I'm going to respond personally. Be patient with me though. So here we go. We're in this together, right? So let's move ahead together. True greatness. Now I thought about this. How does wondering compassionately, I'll talk about that, what it really means in a few moments, but how does wondering compassionately relate to greatness? If you think about the whole idea, dare to be great, it is daring to be great because we have to come out of our comfort zone. In a way, we got to come down the V with other human beings to share what is meant to be powerful. But that really is not accomplished. True greatness is not achieved by what you accomplish. I want you to think about this for a moment. True greatness is not achieved by what you accomplish. It's expressed by love and service to others, but it's impossible without first loving yourself. Now, time out. Okay, Marshall's going mushy on us. No, wait a minute. Yeah, all right. In government trainings, we don't usually talk about love for self, love for a coworker and all that. But you guys would take a bullet for almost anybody in your comm center. You know, as I said, almost. I actually kind of hope it's 100%. The heart of service of 911 is incredible. What I want to suggest, though, is that we do have to learn to love ourselves better. A lot of us have been through crap in our lives where, quite frankly, if nobody's around, we would admit it's hard to love ourselves. So without self-acceptance, we're going to wear ourselves out striving to prove our worth through service until there is nothing left of us. Yep, you hear me. If you've been with me in class, you can hear this, where this is coming from. Now, I make reference to my sister, Debbie, the dispatcher, because I'm reminding you this is personal for me. But it's also because I have a sense, because you've one-on-one with me so many times, what it's like when you carry away those calls, the classic calls, the number one call that's most difficult for dispatchers besides officer down handling that, shots fired, are those child calls, call after call over time. If all of your worth is in the service, there can be nothing left of you at a certain point, right? True greatness does not do great things at the price of self-destruction, you guys. Self-sacrifice, yeah, for sure, but not self-destruction through endless striving, okay? By the way, this is a no preach zone. You're not going to hear me being judgmental and pointing a big finger at you. It's the opposite. I'm asking you to take a step aside and think about yourself to begin with. And you might wonder why I'm going to start with self-compassion before I move to compassion for others. You'll see. All right. So, to love powerfully, we've got to be free from self-judgment because it tears us down. It weakens us. It tells us lies about who we are, and it blinds us from what we're called to be. Just think about that for a minute. So true greatness may call us first to accept healing. If you want to know more about where to find healing, you can just go to 911 Training Institute, our website, and go to the resources tab. I've got free information there that guides you into exploring healing. We can't talk about that in depth today. But if your give a damn is busted, if your soul, you know, is rocked by the overwhelm of everything you've done, trying to do more isn't going to work. Real greatness, though, is really about accessing how uniquely gifted you are. Nobody can rock the call the way you do. Nobody can love quite the way that you do. So my first appeal here is to accept healing, okay? All right. Okay, so take a look at this. Now, Ricardo, where are you, man? Pop online there for a second. I want you to join me and the others here. And what comes to your mind? There he is. Hey, bro.
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, there's the man. Like, I think it's nice to have a little company during this little bit. Okay, so here we are, Ricardo. This is like the set with the ink blot, the Rorschach, right? Here's a picture. What does it bring to your mind? Now, before you say something, I want to count to 10 and ask you guys out there, shoot something on the screen now. What comes to your mind right now? We're talking about dare to be great. We're wondering compassionately. And then you see the finger tap the first domino. What might that be about? I'm going to ask you just to think about it and fire out a few things here. I'll give you a little background music. While you're thinking.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Okay. So, Ricardo.
Oh, there you go.
What does that bring to mind for you?
It's coming into the comments right now. So those who are watching, we kind of talked about this yesterday. But the first thing that I thought was that, I guess, how did I put it last time? I'm trying to think of how I even put it. But to me, it was this signifies where, if something, let's say somebody comes into dispatch with a bad attitude, it's going to spread. It's going to go along until you break that cycle. Yeah. They're dropping all these dominoes, because let's say they're in the same place, but then when the first person is stuck to that mindset, it can influence the rest and they all continue to topple over.
Right on. Look at this by everybody here. Small star can have big impacts. Chain reaction. One person can influence many, right? Everything affects the next thing in line. Mm-hmm. If not spaced correctly, it won't work. That's interesting. Hey, Dave, we're only as strong as our weakest link. Okay, the person at the end must catch everyone else. Okay, check that out. So interesting. Very nice. Okay, you guys, thank you. This is the kind of exchange that we want to have, and it's just beginning, right? Thank you, Ricardo. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let me suggest something. I prompted with the question. There's no wrong answer. All the things you guys have said, one small action can make big changes. It's a ripple effect, no question about it. How about this? Without self-compassion, the self-judgments are almost daily. What happens with the first self-judgment and the second and the third and the fourth? Where does it leave us? Okay, now we're going to set aside all the rest of the humans out there. We're getting in that direction. Of course, that's what it's all about. But we start from on the inside, right? what kind of a cascade do you have going in terms of what you say to yourself? What it leads us to the question is, anxiety, depression, misery, these things build out. And by the way, check out a good read, Kristen Neff. It's the Power of Kindness. The Power of Kindness. Just check it out. You'll see the citation there. It's self-compassion. But the question is, how do you talk to yourself when nobody's listening? Okay, now, just bear with me. Remember, we are coming down the V a little bit here, taking a little bit of risk. But how do you talk to yourself when no one's listening? And the goal today is not to end up feeling crappy. It's to travel through the train by admitting at first where we're at. And let me be honest with you, Jim Marshall struggles sometimes with this. Just because I'm a therapist doesn't mean I'm perfect. I'm on a journey just like you. We're far more alike than different. And why am I asking this question? All of us are what I call, some of you will know, extraordinary caregivers. What does that mean? You're investing care that's at a high level in an extraordinary circumstances where you're faced with a lot of traumatic crap. Everybody's awful, the worst stuff in human life, right there at the console. Well, guess what? Emergency room doctors, nurses, right? Trauma therapists like myself, all those years, we're taking in so much. In the pileup of all of that, if we're also self-critical about how we're rolling in a major way, the fallout there is what Kristen F. recognizes as anxiety, depression, some misery, right? So we want to be thinking about where we're going with this. Here's the encouragement. What about today? What about today in practicing every day that we stop that cascade, we stop the domino effect of the impacts of our own self-talk that is self-destructive. It's not so easy as just deciding we're going to do it, but it does begin with the recognition, okay? Self-loving and trying to stay sane in an insane environment. Right, Mithara, thank you so much. Yep, we're pushed too far. Right on. So there's got to come a point, you guys, where we do more, and that is self-compassion. By the way, this is the opposite of entitlement and narcissism, because I know some of the turnoff here for you guys as ECGs, somebody asks how we are, we go, I'm fine, how are you? It's uncomfortable for us. And it feels like it's a little bit too much BS, too much, psychology, and like what we need is more people with mental toughness and grit, not more whiners. Okay, I'm with you, I hear that. But I'll take the grittiest person, the mentally toughest person. But if they don't have self-compassion, that's not true mental toughness. That's degradation of self over time. So self-compassion is the opposite of entitlement and narcissism. Because why? It empowers you actually to be far more effective and powerful in serving everyone else. So our work on true greatness begins by what? It begins by wondering compassionately. And I want to just offer you this idea. This concept came to me, and I'm, a little reveal here. As a younger therapist, I had clients where some of them were just in horrible situations. They'd gone through torture. They'd gone through horrific abuse. And I was pouring myself out with these people. And, I did take a lot of it home. It was hard to have that boundary because their lives matter in the week after week. And I didn't just have 1 hour sessions. Often with severe trauma, you might be having extended sessions several times a week with people because you're trying to keep them out of hospital unless hospital is really where they need to be. And for me, then, in between those sessions, have somebody coming in and, their complaint was maybe something like, they can't afford the new car. They have a 2019, but they want the 2020. They're so bothered because their finances won't allow them to get the 2020, even though they have a beautiful car. And they're complaining about their wife because she's so naggy. And the fact is, the person hadn't done anything that they've been asked to do. What I'm trying to say is there were situations with clients where I kind of felt like in my own mind, this is stupid, pull it together. And then I realized that, so for the woman who walked in the office one day and she was talking about her daughter, needing help with her daughter, I helped her with that situation. And I wasn't judging, but it seemed like a pretty minor problem with her daughter. So we're working over a few weeks. How can she parent most effectively her daughter? When we achieved that objective, she said, okay, now I'll tell you the real reason I'm here. The real reason I'm here, I was testing you to see if I could trust you. The real reason I'm here is, and then she told me what she had been through much younger in her life. She was testing because she expected to be judged. So what I'm suggesting is that we need to wonder compassionately. So what does that mean? It means to set aside all preconceived notions about a person, to refuse the rush to judgment about them because of their behavior, to give the benefit of the doubt, right? To look deeper beyond the behavior to what might drive it. I'm not saying, you guys, we make a hall pass for bad behavior, like, oh, it's okay, it doesn't matter what anybody does, let's look at the deep meaning behind it. No, I'm not saying that. We hold people accountable, beginning with ourselves, no question about it. But just bear with me here. It's not making excuses for bad behavior, but to slow ourselves from assuming the worst. What else? Wondering compassionately is more. It's to summon the humility to tolerate the vulnerability of allowing that no matter how right we think we are, that we might be wrong, right? It's to refuse to condemn, to open ourselves to the possibility that the person may be more, they may be better than we think, that they can't be accurately known by our judgment of their behavior. Okay, man, I know this sounds like a challenge here, but I think we need it because, look, with 911, you guys, because of all the stuff you deal with the humans out there, it's so natural to become superly judgmental. And it doesn't mean it's a bad on your character, but the reality is there's a bigger risk of you guys becoming judgmental, right? But more so with yourself. Okay, it means wondering compassionately that we may gain rather than waste a relationship that could be deeply valuable to us in the work or life that we share together, right? And wondering compassionately, it might be something that we do with others, but it might also be something that we have to do with ourselves. And that's where we move now forward. Now, I want you guys to think about this. We're going to move into some teaching here, but bear with me a little bit. Shifting from self-judgment to self-compassion, that's our superpower. Now, how many of you guys, when you blow it, you beat yourself up? Or when you've made a goal in your personal life and then you fall short of it, can you relate to beating up on yourself, right? And many of us can, and that becomes a real conditioned response. But here's my question: how's that working for you? All right, the beat up on myself. Now, I'm not saying we don't hold ourselves accountable, but I want you to think about this for a minute. Let's consider that we blow it in some way. Maybe it's a call, and you know it sucks when you mess up on a call. I know very major things can happen, but take a look at this. Right? The choice we make in response to when we blow it, you guys, is key to our growth and our treatment of other people. So check this out, right? Here's one way we can do it. Ownership, yeah, we're going to own it, and self-judgment in that moment. So what happens? I'm intolerant of my failure. There's no growth there. I feel intolerant, like there's no room for this. So I feel shame and discouragement. Does anybody out there struggle with shame, right? What is guilt? I feel bad about something that I've done. What is shame? I feel bad about who I am. Okay. And for many of us, when we have a background that we'll talk about in a little bit, we're more inclined to self-judgment than to self-compassion when we blow it, right? So there's shame, discouragement. We displace maybe anger. We shift the blame to other people because it's so bad that I would be the one that made the mistake. So then I'm projecting responsibility onto other people for it. Now remember, this is a no judgment zone. I'm not saying this for you to feel bad about yourself. That would be a little ironic, right? It's not what we're doing. We're gaining insight. So when I own and self-judge, then that cascades to I feel more anxious going forward, right? If I'm more anxious going forward, then what happens? There's more risk of failure, right? And I've got comments coming in. The shame and guilt definitions were life-changing for me. Powerful statement. And then I burn myself out trying too hard. Look, you guys, you already try so hard. You give it away so much. And it's not just for the callers and your responders. You try to give it away for your family. You try to give it away for your friends. And you can't withstand a life of self-judgment each time you fall short because you're trying to do so many things already. You have more opportunities to fall short, right? Let me suggest a change. Here's a change for you. What about we own it when we blow it with self-compassion? Okay, so here's what it looks like. Okay. Well, once upon a time. Now, some of you guys out there are going to know who I'm talking about. Don't mention them to the greater group right here. But I have a story for you. Once upon a time in a comm center, true story, there was a leader known to be a wild man. He should have been dead 6 different ways because he was a ticking time bomb. His health was not good. But this guy was bigger than life. He was brash. He was a strong guy. He was like, everything was big about him. His head was big. His body was big. He was like a tank, you know. He was a powerful dude. in a great way. I mean, you know, just like Mr. Sumo, right? And people, I don't know, they kind of loved him and kind of feared him in a way. But here's the thing. You knew when he spoke up in his booming voice, and he had a voice that was super booming. This is all told to me one-on-one by many dispatchers. I will never disclose anything personal that anybody shared with me. You'll never be able to find out who might have said what. But they said, you know, like this one time, somebody blew it on a call. This gal blew it on a call. And she heard the voice. His office was right at the comm center, like door into his office, right? And she knew she had blown it on the call. And a couple days later, and then the voice comes, mate. It's like, oh no, next one in the tank. When he calls you in and you're the next one in the tank, oh man, grip the seat. So she came in, he said, sit down, shut the door, probably in reverse order. Listen to this. And he played a call, her call. And it wasn't good. It was not a good call. At about 15 seconds in, he hit the stop. He said, what the hell's going on? That's not like you. What's going on? Come on. What's going on? Tears. Sir, I'm so sorry. I knew that was a terrible call. I know I did it really, really bad. I mean, I'm so messed up. I don't think I can concentrate. We're going through this divorce. He's taken everything. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't think I can make my payments. I'm behind, but they're going to take my house. I'm scared to death. Okay, now stop action. What just happened? The boss is not being a therapist, but he sure is tuned in. He's wondering compassionately beneath the surface of the behavior. And what did he do next? It's a true story. He leaned down, and when he came back up, he began writing. So is he writing a pink slip? Is he writing a disciplinary action? What do you think he's writing? Yeah. Shh. Plops it in front of her. Oh, boss, no, I can't. That's $2,000. It's a loan. You'll pay it back when you can. Now, enough said. Get out of here. Rock the console. Now, some of you guys know who I'm talking about because he was famous for saying enough said. And when that boss said enough said, he meant it's over. It's erased. There's no more repercussions. I believe in you. You are not your mistakes. You are not also your successes. You are a human who I value and I respect. And I'm not going to quick judge you. I'm going to be quick to wonder compassionately what's underneath the surface. And I'll tell you something. When that person, that woman walked out of the office, how do you think she felt? Right? How do you think she felt? Well, let me suggest this. Upset for sure, still somewhat. But she can accept she has limits, right? What did he just do, you guys? He modeled self-compassion. Sometimes we don't just learn self-compassion by our own good works or reading a book. Sometimes we learn it because somebody shows us compassion so powerful that we realize it maybe is okay to be a little kinder with ourselves, right? What else? We're not rocked to the core. My head is up. And this is what I heard, you guys. It wasn't just one person in this comm center. They'd gone through major hell. And then this leader died. And then they grieved, and they grieved so much, they called me in to sit one-on-one with these people. And what I heard again and again was, and I'm telling you, men and women through tears said, he was like a father to me. And why? Because he leaned into them. He leaned into them to discover who they were, to do his best to lift up who they were. So they weren't rocked to their core. They could have their head up even when they screwed up. Now, it's not like this is probably perfect and ironclad with no flaws in it. I'm sure they had their times and when maybe he wasn't ideal. But we'd have to wonder compassionately what was going on for him as well in those situations. You can accept feedback to learn when you're not condemning yourself, right? Because it doesn't mean you're bad and awful. What else? You're concerned for sure. I want to be better, but I can see opportunity. When she walked out and when others walked out, right? What's the sense? I am inspired to rock the console because I have the weight lifted off of condemnation from my boss and from myself. Let's go. And I know maybe I'm better than that, right? So see the cascade that's positive? On the left side, you see a cascade that's negative that ends up with you being burned out. And guess what? We're not much good to anybody at that point. We need to flip this, right? And see the cascade going positive. We're more apt to succeed because of everything that followed that I just showed you up here, right? And we can recharge and boost our resilience. You guys, you're familiar with me talking about how we got to recharge our battery, not just on the phone, but in your body, in your mind, in your soul. That's your resilience. It's the mojo you have to do life. When we get into a self-condemning mode, a self-shaming mode, overwhelmed by guilt, we are draining that inner battery. It sets us up for disease of all kinds. And I'm not saying, oh, you're going to get sick today because you're struggling with shame. That's bad programming. I'm not saying that. But in order to protect yourself and your future and your physical health, it's critical to practice self-compassion. Okay, but easier said than done, right? But where does the bent to self-judge come from? Now, you guys, I'm going to be going a little bit ballistic on you here for a few minutes in terms of deep psychology. But guess what? There's nothing I haven't learned. There's nothing I have learned, I should say, that you can't learn either. We've just drank from different wells. So I don't hold back any punches with 911. One of the reasons I love teaching and working with you and co-teaching together with you in the classroom is because you got to be whip smart to do your job. And that's not blowing smoke up your kilt. You know it's true. And that intelligence now, today, in this hour, I want you to use for yourself, not to be better for somebody else, but for yourself right now. Not to be selfish, but to be empowered so you can be all that you're meant to be. So we have to ask ourselves, man, I keep going back to self-judgment, to shame, right? And I see people weighing in and acknowledging this, right? Where did it come from? Where did it come from? Now, I'm going to suggest there's a model here. There is a man. I'll go to the next slide here. You can see the teeter-totter. There is a man who helped us discover something about self-judgment. It can actually be a learned survival strategy. It's called the locus of control shift. Now, let me unpack this for you, but first let me give credit where credit is due. Colin Ross is a psychiatrist, but this is a psychiatrist often hated by other psychiatrists. I call him the crazy Canuck from Quebec. This guy, I think he's from Toronto, but I had the chance to be trained by him for a little bit. And this guy does not begin by prescribing the meds. Meds are valuable, but where there's healing needed, we need the healing as well, right? But before he would write prescriptions, he would enter in, wondering compassionately about what had happened in the lives of his patients. And his specialty, you guys, was multiple personality disorder, what we now call dissociative identity disorder. He did group therapy with like 10 people at the same time. I was in the group with him, observing, being a part of it. 10 people with dissociative identity disorder. That's amazing, right? And I was glad he was the therapist and not me. He had discovered something that became universal, and he wrote it in this book, The Trauma Model. Now, this is a classic. It was written 20 years ago, but there's nothing old about it. When I understood the locus of control shift, I understood parts of me from my own past. I understood parts of my clients. And as I was able to teach them about the locus of control shift, the lights went on and they started to realize, my God, I've been trying to get over self-judging, self-blaming. I never realized it helped me survive. Okay. So what are we talking about right now? The locus of control shift is about this. One little caveat. I'm not saying everyone who self-judges has had trauma in their background. I'm not saying all of you have had trauma in your background. And I'm not trying to just blame our struggles on our past and on our parents. I'm not trying to do the blame game thing here. It's the opposite. All of our parents were human. If you're a parent now, you're human too. You can relate with me to making mistakes that are regrettable. Wonder compassionately as you explore this, okay? What happens? Well, look, we all have a basic need for safety when we're kids, when we're young, and all the way through life, but safety, nurturance, right? And a dignity to be upheld. Even little people, right, have a sense of dignity, meaning we got this personhood that needs to be honored. If you haven't noticed, even people who are depressed, they might say, I'm a piece of crap. I'm just worthless. But if somebody offends them, they feel offended. So there is still dignity in there, right? And so what's happening right here? We have a basic need for safety, nurturance, and dignity. Okay, let's start with that. Now, when we were little, we were black and white thinkers. Before the age of 7 or so, we're what's called concrete pre-operational thinkers. What does that mean? Now, bear with me. This is all relevant. Meaning we only do black or white. People are either good, they're bad, they're alive, they're dead. They're happy, they're sad. There's no in between, there's no gray, right? So this means if my parents did bad things to me, that would mean that they were bad. Okay. I can't just say, well, my parents are wonderful people or they're good people, but sometimes they make mistakes. You know, my dad drank not because he was bad, it's because maybe he had problems. No. Bad people because they did something bad in my little black and white mind. And that would have been too painful to admit, right? That they had control and hurt me. See, if they're bad and they have the control and I'm in the house, where do I go? That would feel unbearable. And what would be unbearable? Sadness because the situation's not changing, a grief, sorrow, and fear, right? That I can't do anything about it. And maybe anger too at the parent, but you don't want to express that. But that might not be good. Thinking this way isn't smart. So, because look at it, leaves me hopeless and stuck as a little kid in the situation. So what do? We actually do a shift. So I can't stay with the parent is bad when I'm a little kid. That doesn't work too good for me. I shift responsibility from them to me. I say, it's me. I'm bad. Maybe they drink. Maybe my dad drank because he was unhappy with me because I'm not doing the right things. I need to be a good boy. Now remember, I can't say I'm just doing bad things today. I have to say I'm bad because that's the way my brain works as a little kid. So what happens if I believe that these things are my fault, something I'm doing wrong, if there's something wrong with me and that makes me bad. And now here's the weird part about this. Bear with me. I know this is getting pretty wild. That actually works because then if I can be good enough, if I can behave better, if I can be pretty enough or smart enough, then they'll love me and then they'll stop what hurts me. Then I'll be safe and I'll escape this pain. You guys, I'm not making this stuff up. I've done about, 36,000 hours of therapy. And I have to say, in a significant percentage of the situations I've been entrusted to come alongside people in, this has been a dynamic at work. That we took in a belief about ourselves that actually helped us survive. I can't change the other person, but I can change myself. It must be me anyhow. And therefore, I strive and I strive and I strive. Can you relate to the possibility? And I'm going to check my phone and see if I have any text from people here. Okay. Can you relate to the possibility that this becomes a way of thinking in life? The older we get, it doesn't mean we automatically change. We still operate with the locus of control shift to I'm bad. So often therapy doesn't work, and friends in ourselves trying to tell us that we're okay, that we are lovable, that we're not bad, doesn't work. Why? Because we're actually protecting a way that we survived. If we weren't aware of it, but we are. Okay. Give me some feedback. Let me know. Is this making sense? Shoot me some comments right now. If you have questions, be sure to ask them, and Ricardo will tap me if you have questions about this that I can help answer. Okay, so then the deal is, what do we do with the locus control shift? If that's what was going on for us, how do we shift out of the locus of control shift, right? Because this thing doesn't work so good. It leaves my identity twisted. Okay. So reclaiming self-compassion is the task. It's overcoming the locus of control shift. It's realizing which me is operating. Okay, now take a nice deep breath. All right, thank you. It makes sense. Thank you, Marcelo. You guys, which me is operating suggests that I'm not always truly in my adult self. I mean, have you ever sat with somebody or listened to somebody and thought, he's acting just like a child? Well, yeah, hundreds of times, right? Okay, again, not a hall pass, not trying to provide deep explanations from psychology for every stupid behavior out there. But this is universal, you guys. I have to know which part of me is operating from one day to the next in the situations I'm in. Let me just introduce you to someone. Have you ever heard of Eckhart Tolle? Some people say his last name Tolle or Tolle. This is a man who had profound depression through his 20s, all the way up to age 29. And then he had a download that was enormous and spiritual, and it changed, completely transformed the way he thought about life, the way he thought about being a human being. And he began to unpack teaching that's quite inspired. I would encourage you to check him out because he has this idea that there's a little me and a big me within each of us. And we tend to go back and forth in between those two. Remember the basic need we have, right? For safety, nurturance, dignity, meaning our personhood being honored, right? These are core needs that we have. The more secure within myself I feel, the more I heal, the more I practice self-compassion, the less I depend on others to validate my worth, the less wounded I am by their own little me behavior, okay? The more generous and compassionate I become. Now let's take a look. That's the big me. But what about the little me? Let's put this out here. The more I'm operating from my own unhealed pain, the more critical I am of myself and all others. I may seem to others to be the jerk or the witch in the room, but that is usually a wrong judgment people conclude from their own little me selves. What are we saying here? A lot of the crap we do, the ways that we think, and the ways that our coworkers and others think, and the people we love the most when they hurt us the most, are often operating out of their own unhealed pain, right? Think about it for a minute. And then we're judging them for that. We're judging ourselves for it. Instead of recognizing, wait a minute, once upon a time, Jim Marshall was a little boy named Jim, right? Jimmy. And my father was an amazing, wonderful man, but he also drank. He discovered when he was young that it helped him overcome trauma. And when he drank, he was not abusive. He shut down. And I couldn't find him on the inside, if you know what I mean. And I felt very afraid, very insecure. And at times I thought he was dying because it looked like he was having heart attacks. It was something else. It really wasn't a heart attack, but I didn't know that. And I felt so afraid and so insecure. And I felt powerless to be able to do anything about it, right? That little me, through the work I've done in my own healing journey, usually doesn't come out. But there are situations where I'm prompted, I'm triggered, and I feel big insecurity. I have to know, stop, pause, wait a minute. What's going on right now inside of me? Take my breaths. Could this be the little me? When I act that's this other person, I feel competitive with them. I feel threatened by them, right? Whether it's at work or wherever it is. Back up, stop. What's that really about? Because what I discover is when I can pull out of being competitive, there's generosity and then there's collaboration. But when I'm stuck in my little me, it's all about survival. We need to be able to shift and get the healing, the support, the help that we need to be more secure within ourselves, right? So that we're operating out of the big me. So what is the big me? It's the me that knows who I am. I know where I've been. I know I have a story. I've been pursuing healing of the story. I desire to practice generosity and wondering compassionately because I know they have a story too. And before I jump in quick, I'm going to pull back and I'm going to wonder what else might be going on for them. What else might be going on? Okay. Yeah, thank you, James. Hurt people. Yep. Realizing which me is operating is freeing. Trust me. Yeah. Yeah. And look, we do want to escape reality, right? Because when reality sucks and we don't know what to do with it, that's when self-medicating takes place. That's when, when we feel ashamed already and we feel I'm bad, why not self-medicate? Because I'm just kind of extinguishing, the dung heap anyhow. I just kind of that's because we've bought the lie without having the insight about the locus of control shift that I chose to, without realizing it, blame myself because it worked for me to survive because then I could do something about it. Now we recognize, and I want you to recognize, when you feel the insecurity, when you feel the fear, when you feel the anger rise up, when you feel threatened by somebody else, stop and ask, where am I coming from right now? Is it the little me or it's got to be the little me? And I'm going to shift, take my breaths, affirm who I am and what I did to survive, and practice generosity, practice kindness. It begins though with practicing kindness to ourselves. Okay. Been there, done that, right? We rise by lifting others. Thank you, Misty. Very good, you guys. So, folks, I want to offer you now a break from lecture. And the cool thing, I would not offer this in a class, right? I remember when I first started training 911, it was, I got to cut this off. It was 2005. I remember right in the middle of class, the first time I taught relaxation, breathing, I think it was in progressive muscle relaxation. I thought they were going to roast me because, seriously, man, talk about kumbaya stuff. But actually, now I was grateful for it. This this exercise here, self-compassion with 3 S's for emphasis, right? Here's an exercise. Now, this comes from Kristen Neff, and no one is there. No one can see you right now, folks. So you can do this. I'm going to ask you, remember the V? Come on down the V a little bit. Take a risk, because there's actually another V. There's one part of me and another part of me. We keep those separate because it feels safer, and I have too. No judging here. I'm going to ask you to travel down the V and connect up with yourself for a minute. Who's going to see you, right? So, and if you can't right now because there are people in the room with you or whatever, that's fine. You'll receive this. All you have to do is ask, and we'll get the steps to you. But this is from Kristen Neff from the book Self-Compassion. Okay, so sit comfortably where you are right now. I'm just going to walk you through this. The first task is create an image of a safe place in your mind. What would be a safe place in your mind that makes you feel peaceful, calm, relaxed? It might be a white sandy beach. It might be a forest with deer. It might be at your grandma's. It might be sitting by a fire. Try to really envision this place in your mind's eye. And by the way, you guys, if you get distracted, just come on back. We're just experimenting. And the weirder this feels to you guys, the more you need it. So try to really envision this place in your mind's eye. What are the colors you see? Take a moment. What colors do you see? How bright is it? Get a sense of the light. What sounds or smells are there? So if you ever feel anxious or insecure during your voyage into self-compassion, when you start to get anxious about doing the work of healing, when you're starting to get, after a day, when you feel really thrown off your base and insecurity, anxiety is coming back, you can come back to this place, to this safe place. I've helped many, many clients build safe places because in the middle of trauma work, when hard things are coming up, sometimes you need to step to the side. For one of my clients, it was a hot air balloon. And that hot air balloon would rise above the Serengeti, and she could hear everything down below. And she could see zebras and giraffes. She said, one day I'm going to go there. And, you know, after years of hard work, she ended up completing therapy, and she did go to Africa. And that safe place became a real place. It had already been real in here. It became real in Africa. So this is step one. What are we doing? Creating a safe place. Step two, next task is create an image of an ideally caring and compassionate figure. I know this sounds weird, you guys, but of all people, 911 pros, you deserve this, even though it makes you comfortable. And if you don't want to do it now, you don't have to, okay? So you're trying to create an image of an ideally caring, compassionate figure, someone who embodies wisdom, strength, warmth, non-judgmental acceptance. For some, this will be a known religious figure like Christ or Buddha. For others, it will be someone they've known in the past who was super compassionate, like a favorite aunt or a teacher. For me, it's a teacher. For still others, it might be a beloved pet, a completely imaginary being, or even an abstract image like white light. And I know that sounds strange, but I've seen powerful things happen with people even envisioning light. Try to see this image as vividly as possible, incorporating as many of the senses as possible. So just take a moment with that. Now, I know you're going to have to practice this on your own and take more time with this, but let's walk through this. If you're suffering in some way right now, think about the type of wise, caring things that this idealized person, this source of compassion, what would they say to you right now? When you're really struggling, now is the time when you bring back that image of that person in your mind. You can do this in between things, even in the day. What would they say? What would their voice sound like, right? What feelings would be conveyed in their tone to you, right? If you're feeling a little bit numb or shut down, just let yourself bask in the compassionate presence of that image. Allow yourself just to be there. Just allow yourself to be there. Okay. I have to tell you guys, it feels vulnerable to me to talk like this and offer things to you like this, because so many of you guys have been hardcore suck it up. I'm taking the risk to do it because I believe it's so important for you. And lastly, you guys, release your compassionate image, the image that you just had. Take a few breaths and sit quietly in your own body. Savor the comfort and the ease that brought to your mind and to your body. Know that whenever you want to generate compassion for yourself, you can use this image as a springboard and help you receive the gifts of kindness that you need. Okay? Very good. Very good. And this will be recorded so you can use it again. And you can see also where it comes from. And I've given you the link, which will be in this. And you can link to more exercises. Very good. So you guys, I'm glad that you traveled with me through that. Now, look, we don't have a lot of time left. We have just the right amount of time left. You notice I didn't talk about compassion for others really very much yet, because it's all built on compassion for self. I want you to know that the boy to the left of me, yes, that's me on the right. That's Jim Marshall in my 30s. And the boy on the left is my brother, Roger. Roger was born profoundly, what we used to call profoundly mentally retarded. Okay. It was so bad that my mom struggled to keep him at home for the first 18 months of his life. I'm about 2 years older than Roger. She struggled to keep him at home. The doctor said, institutionalize him. And back then it was just those big, horrible hospitals, right? But you got to put him there because you'll never be able to function. My mom was literally not sleeping. I mean, she had maybe 2 hours of sleep per night for so long. She could no longer do it. When he was 18 months old, my father and mom finally decided they needed to place Roger in the institution. Now, you guys, this ends up beautiful, so bear with me here, okay? I'm not going to end on some awful note. But this is my story. This is my risk as a gift to you, I hope. So we began visiting my brother in the state hospital. I'll never forget the marble floors and the huge ceilings and the sounds in that place. And it was like kids were warehoused. It was huge. Now, they were trying to do their best to provide good care for them, but it was bizarre as a little kid traveling in there. We visited my brother, and I remember maybe once a week or so. But then something happened. And when I was about 6 years old, the visit stopped. Why? Because each time we had gone for a visit, at the end of the visit, my brother would freak out. Now, he didn't have intelligence the way that he could talk or speak. He had a few words of passive language. He was profoundly, quote, mentally retarded, as we called it back then. He would freak out so badly. And you guys, you're welcome. He would freak out so badly that my parents realized, and with the acknowledgement of the staff there, that the better thing to do was to stop visiting my brother. They stopped visiting Roger. Can you imagine, wondering compassionately, what that would have been like for them? They realized the most loving thing to do was to stop seeing their son because it tortured him when we left. All he could understand was a sense of abandonment that was very deep. My father had blamed himself more for that decision than my mother. She felt that it was important, it was painful. We traveled through the years. You guys, I hadn't seen my brother from the time I was 6 until one day when I was a freshman in college at Central Michigan University. I said to myself, wait a second. I've thought about my brother so much all these years, like forbidden to see him. I'm a grown-ass man. I'm going to visit my brother if I want to visit him. And I called a friend. I needed a posse. And I called my buddy, Ronnie. And I said, Ronnie, will you come with me down to the state hospital? It's time for me to see my brother. I want my brother back. And he said, your brother? You never told me you had a younger brother. Well, what do you like? What do you like that, right? Anyhow, the day showed up. And I showed up at the hospital. We walked through the long corridors. And we got to a room that was huge. There's probably 200 kids in there, these big cribs, and they had protective covers. And my brother had been out, and he was standing. And at this time, I was 19, so he was about 16, 17. And Ronnie said, I'll never forget the look in his eyes. When he turned around, he knew you. My brother, when he saw me, now it's going to get a little bit loud. He looked at me. I wonder, will he judge me? Will he cry? Will he want to hurt me? What will happen? Will he, if he even knows me? He turned around. He looked at me, and he had these beautiful blue eyes. You can't see him in the picture. He looked at me from about 8 feet away, and he went, woo! I tried to not do it too loud. He reached for me. They said, watch out for Roger's arms, man, because like he is strong. Even though he's wiry, he is strong. He grabbed me. He pulled me in. I brought his head down over his arm down over my head, and he squeezed me, brought me in, and he just went, ah, and he just held me. And we just cried together. It was an amazing reunion. You guys, flash forward. I began visiting my brother. And each year I would say a little bit of something to my mom and dad and to my brother and sister. You guys, it doesn't turn out bad. It doesn't turn out bad. You got to visit Roger. It'll be okay. Well, in the interim, they moved him up north in Michigan to near where we lived, an hour away. I continued visiting here. And you know what? Every time I visited him, it was amazing. He always gave more than I could possibly give. I always received more than I gave. There was never judgment from Roger. It was like complete forgiveness, complete compassion. And so I said to my folks, one day, you guys, I want you to come. No guilt, no guilt, no guilt. Well, my father and mother surprised me one day. Now, I know this part will be a little bit sad for a moment. My folks visited my brother the first time when he was about 35. So it had been from age, I think, 4 to 35, about 31 years. My dad now had multiple sclerosis. We're wrapping up now. I just have 3 minutes left. My dad had multiple sclerosis. He was wobbly. He couldn't walk very well. And Roger, he was known for being woo when he got excited, spastic, right? And he would reach out and grab the girls. All knew they had to watch out for my brother Roger. But the day came. I said, you guys, when you come, show up. My brother and I, we had a ritual, right? We would walk together. We would sing together. We would sit down. We'd wrestle until we were sweaty all over and we would have so much fun. And I'd put him in my arms and I'd rock him and I'd sing to him a little bit, right? Then he'd sit down and he'd look at his J.C. Penney catalog. And, folks, the day came. I said, you guys, when you come in the front door of his house, don't look at him. I'm going to have him turn the other way because he might freak out a little bit. So here we go. They came in the door. They walked in. I had Roger played out. He was all exercised out. I was holding him like this. We're just kind of doing this. Imagine what it was like for my parents. What were they thinking inside themselves? What would Roger do? I was here with Roger. I said, okay, Mom, come on. She got up. Before he could see her, she said, hi, Raj. And he turned and he went, ah, and he grabbed her and he brought her and he held her. And my mom began to cry. I said, come on, Dad. Dad was wobbly, but he came over. And then he said, hi, son. Now, those 3 steps from my father, were believed the longest 3 steps he'd ever taken, not just because of his MS, but because of the shaming he had done, the little me, the beating up on himself he had done. Roger looked at him and he went, woo! And he grabbed my dad and he pulled him in. Now all 4 of us were together and we just held each other and we wept and we laughed. And it was one of the best days of my life. You guys, why am I sharing this story with you? Because what may be a retard to somebody else is my brother. But don't judge yourself for where you have judged others in error, right? We sometimes know just enough to be right and not quite enough to know we're wrong. It begins with compassion for yourself, wondering compassionately for ourselves, reaching out, wondering compassionately for others. I thank you guys. I want for you to have joy in your lives. I want to start here by wondering compassionately for you first. Thank you. That's it.
Man, thank you so much for that. Let me bring my camera back up here. I was just telling Leah just a second ago. I was like, man, he's gonna have me in tears here, and I have to come back on the camera here in a minute. That's a powerful story, man. And you can see the comments right here. They're just blowing up right now with this story and just your entire presentation to begin with. It's always an honor to have you part of everything, man. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Ricardo. I love you, man, and I'm grateful to everybody here. I just cannot tell you what a privilege it is to be a part of this and to be part of everybody in the 911 family.
There are 2 questions here, really quick before we go into the next session, which will actually be at 1 p.m. So we're perfect on time right now. So I'm
Okay.
going to go ahead and ask. So this first one up at the very top, it says, how do you know which route to go with someone for therapy? EMDR is hot right now, is a hot topic. CPT is the route I was sent to, and I know
Yes.
there are others, but was just curious on how a decision for a first step is made.
Very good. So that does depend on what you're seeking help for. And I thank you for the question. You want to use two things. You want to use a treatment that's evidence-based. Now, how do you know that it's evidence-based? Okay, so for post-traumatic stress disorder, if that's what we're talking about, and by the way, it doesn't mean you have full-blown PTSD. You might, though, have triggering that's going on and too much anxiety and apprehension about certain calls. You wanted to use one of the predominantly 3 treatments that are evidence-based, and there is information on this from the VA and the Department of Defense. It's best practice guidelines for PTSD. If you Google VA DOD, it gets in the weeds, but look, you guys, it is cognitive reprocessing, so cognitive behavioral therapy that's for trauma, and then exposure therapy is the other one, and then EMDR. My preference is EMDR, but those other 2 are also very effective. The other thing is you want to make sure you're getting it from a clinician who's experienced in this. The use of these evidence-based treatments is qualified, so vet them. And I've always invited folks. I've helped our Now with Family find a lot of people out there. Go to our website and look under Seeking Personal Help. I've given you guidance on how to find a therapist. I hope that helps.
Perfect. And then the next question on here is people are wondering if they can get copies of your slideshow for the diagrams that you shared.
For sure. Yeah, all of this will be available. Ricardo, you'll guide me through how to make sure that everybody gets this.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then, anyone who's watching right now, and then when you go into the replay as well, there's a lot of information that was shared in the slides, but you can also check out everything for the 911 Training Institute all over social media, as well as their website. And really quick, before we jump off here, and if you want, you can actually pull up those polls as well, and you can kind of comment a little bit on some of the information here.
Okay.
I think one of the ones, like right here, this one, there's something, and this one was cut off, and that was my bad, so I apologize at first, but it said, there's something that we might never tell others, but we might admit in a secret poll like this one is, I have a hard time accepting and loving myself. And 127 votes, the majority, and it just jumped up again. It was strongly agree.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see, which one was that? Was that the bottom one?
That was the second one.
Okay, yeah, because I was scrolling. There's something we might never tell others, but we might admit secret. Like I've heard time. Yes, strongly agree. Look, this is exactly why we did this. We don't talk about these things in a class full of people. It's just too difficult. Sometimes in my smaller classes we have. Yeah, this is it. You guys, you just deserve the support, the healing, and I'll say a shout out to peer support, to Pam Apoka if you're out there, and to all of our peer support programs. We've got our folks that are reaching alongside to try to help you guys, support you, getting to the support you need for stuff like this.
One last question before we end this session here and go to the next one is, are you familiar with RTM? Any feedback?
No, jog my memory. You can type it out for me. RTM. And if that's the use of electrical impulse, it's not ECT. But no,
they haven't responded yet. So
yeah, it's not a treatment that I've used. There are a lot of things that are coming out. What I would say though is I want there to be an evidence base for anything that you try, and in the literature there has to be good, solid data that's been supported, reinforced by several studies, and the studies have to be well designed in order to trust it. There she is. Hi, Pam.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Jim, again, and for everyone who was part of this session. This is just session 4 of 8 for day 1 of this Dare to Be Great 2020 virtual conference. And I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast. It'll go into the replay, but I'm going to bring all of you over, like I've been saying. I'll bring you over to the next session. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.